Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate, and we're going to talk about what happened in the month of April at the Registry of Deeds. Our headline for the month was Sales Begin to Climb in the Spring and Mortgage Volume is Up. And basically, we've had a very tough winter in real estate, as everyone recognizes. Everyone at the Registry of Deeds was doing work trying to get more of our back records available. And real estate slowed down during that time period. But as we get into the spring, traditionally, we get a bump up. I'm going to go right now to an image on deeds. Deeds are the sale of property at the Registry of Deeds. We recorded 583 deeds in April compared to 534 in March. It was 8% less, however, than last April. Year to date, we're down 4%, but I assume that'll be bumping up again as the market kind of solidifies as we get into the really good weather. We did have a big jump in mortgages recently. Now, mortgages, you take out mortgages when they buy property. They also take out mortgages when they're refinancing their mortgage. Rates have been bumping up and down over the last couple of years. They're very good right now, so many people are taking advantage of low interest rates to refinance their mortgage. We recorded 1,698 mortgages in April, less than the 1,943 in March, but up 31% compared to last year. Over the first 4 months of 2015, we've seen a 44% increase in mortgages, and we expect to see that trend continue. The next chart you're going to see is of foreclosure deeds. The real estate market has been very troubled since 2008. We're still recovering from that time period when the market crashed, as did much of our economy. Foreclosure deeds are a document that is recorded when somebody loses their property back to the lender. We recorded 52 foreclosure deeds in April, more than the 39 in March, and 93% more than we had done a year ago. And many people expect that the lenders are clearing out some of their old inventory, people who had not necessarily been paying their mortgage, but it was caught up in regulations, court cases, and that lenders are going forward, and that's why you're seeing some of the spike in mortgage foreclosure deeds on their mortgages. The next bar chart you're going to see are foreclosure notices. A foreclosure notice is a document that's filed at the registry when somebody is in trouble with their mortgage, when they're going to be facing a foreclosure deed. So there were 70 of those recorded in April, up from 57 in March, and down 25% from last year. While last year we were down 52% over the whole year, we're up 14% right now. You're also going to see coming across the screen a listing of foreclosures and orders of notice by community. From the town of Abington to the town of Whitman, 27 communities in Plymouth County. The city of Brockton and the towns of Plymouth and the towns of Wareham have had the most trouble with foreclosure deeds and notices over the past number of years, and that trend is continuing. Although foreclosures affect everybody, certainly some communities are harder hit. I want to mention we're having a training session at the registry on Thursday, June 4th. Call our office to register, 508-830-9290. I'm going to talk in my next segment with Tim White about some of the office hours visits we've done around Plymouth County and about the Homestead Act. So I'll see you next segment.
I never felt all that special. But in the wake of an earthquake, we can all do something. When donating goods, it's hard to know what's needed. So now it's my turn to help. Aid workers can spend me locally, where I can help save lives. Someone is doing better because of me. Together, we made that happen.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County, and I do this show on a monthly basis. I want to thank PAC TV for their help. In this segment of the show, we always try to do something a little educational in nature. We have had title examiners, we've had closing attorneys, we've had various people involved in the real estate market. In this show today, I wanted to do something a little more in-house. My guest today is my first assistant register, Tim White. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here.
I know you've been on this show before.
I have.
We've done a round of what we call Register on the Road programs, office hours, council on agings, all over Plymouth County, and it still amazes me how few people realize about the Homestead Act. And I thought that would be an important thing to do over this media. We started our office hours in Marion. We went to Lakeville and Rochester and so many communities around Plymouth County. Yesterday we were in Middleborough.
Right.
And it's a chance for us to get out and talk about what we do as a registry, try to help people find a copy of the deed, see whether a mortgage has been discharged, those kinds of things. And like, for example, yesterday in Middleborough, a fellow had a mortgage that he paid off 20 years ago and never had a discharge recorded. We at least sent him in the right direction to try to do that. But as part of those programs, we have talked about the Homestead Act. And do you want to first just give a little background on how you came to the registry?
Sure. I was in private practice for over 30 years in a small firm up in Weymouth. Originally started out in Boston, actually, for probably 10 years. The last 20 years down here on the South Shore. Primarily focusing on litigation, real estate matters, and housing. I actually picked up a special subspecialty in housing, represent a number of the housing authorities down here on the South Shore. I think it's now it's 2 years ago now that we hooked up together, I guess.
Yeah, good.
And
joined the registry.
Hard to believe.
Yeah.
And it's been a very interesting and different experience being in public service as opposed to private practice. But the lessons learned in private practice are great benefit to what I've been able to do in the last 2 years.
Well, certainly your training and your predecessor's training, Mike Holden, make a big difference because so much of what we do is related to the law.
Right.
And, excuse me, the Homestead Act is seemingly simple. It has the idea of keeping people in their home, no matter whether they have outside claimants or not. And do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Sure. The Homestead Act is General Laws Chapter 188 of the laws of the Commonwealth. It has been in existence for a number of years, but there was some major upgrading done in the last couple of years to make it a more consumer-friendly, I think, more residential-friendly statute to add some protections where there were some vagaries. It essentially is a statute that everybody's entitled to make a benefit of, whether you own the property in your own name, whether you own it with a spouse, a sibling, or even with the third parties, as long as it is your primary residence,
right, or
it's intended to be your primary residence, you have a right to claim the homestead exemption. The change a couple of years ago upgraded the amount to, even without making the claim, an automatic $125,000
right,
exemption. So if you have a property that has a value of $300,000 and you have a $200,000 mortgage, you already have a $125,000 homestead exemption to protect your interest should a creditor be a problem for you. a good example, I think, we talk about the types of things that it might protect you from is that you have a serious motor vehicle accident. And you have your automobile insurance coverage, but if it's serious enough, it may very well exceed what your policy limits are. And your home, which is probably your primary and biggest asset, would be subjected to exposure in a lawsuit.
Right.
This protects it. So it's sort of it keeps you in your home as long as it's your primary residence. It keeps your spouse in your home, your children in your home, and is a very, very valuable tool, and that everyone who owns a piece of property should take advantage of. In this day and age, property values are so high that the $125,000 automatic exemption probably isn't enough for most folks. And that's where actually making the filing of the homestead form gives you an additional $250,000 in coverage, and if you're over 62, it's actually or disabled, it's $500,000.
Right. Well, it's an artificial creation of the state legislature.
Right.
Their goal is to keep people in their homes. And there are a whole range of questions we've had over the years, because as questions have come up challenging it, there was a time period when people were refinancing, they were losing the rights to a homestead. Now that is taken care of in the statute. Once you have a homestead file, you're protected forever.
Yeah, I think that's a real good point to bring up, John, is that in the past, if you had you filed your homestead, and then whether you refinanced your property,
right,
the banks would typically require you to release that homestead,
right,
because they want the priority. Well, under the new statute, the banks maintain their priority. So this is one of the things. There are a couple of exceptions that the homestead does not protect you from. You still have to pay your mortgage.
Right.
And
Taxes and
right.
child support if you had those situations.
Right. But now you don't have, you could leave the homestead in existence so that the protection goes back right until the time you initially filed it. So if you filed a homestead back in 1985, you refinanced it in 2015, you don't have to lose that 30 years of protection that you've built up.
And there was always a question if you own property in a trust. There at one point had been a bankruptcy case that made a homestead filing with a trust a question, and when the legislature corrected the law, updated the law, they made sure that was taken care of.
Right, and down at our registry and at our two satellite branches, we have the forms, the homestead
right,
form, both for the individual and for the situation where you own your property in a trust.
Right.
So you still qualify for that homestead exemption. The one thing I would say is that if you do have the property in a trust,
right,
it's likely you will need a trustee certificate authorizing the recording of the homestead.
Normally already on record, you know.
Well, oftentimes, let's put it this way. If you're going to record something that's going to affect the title to the property and it's held by a trust,
right,
you're going to want to record a trustee
right,
certificate.
Right. And one of the other changes that they made, which was always an issue over the years, because of the large number of manufactured housing, mobile home parks,
right,
many people called,
right,
in Plymouth County, they brought those in under the Homestead Act.
Right.
Even though those individuals in many cases don't own the underlying land.
Property itself, the real estate, right. But it does make perfect sense. It's
right,
still your primary residence, and you ought to be able to get the same benefits that if you actually own the land as well.
So, you know, for a simple $37 filing fee,
right,
$36 in land court, you can come to our office. Our offices, again, are 50 Oberry Street. In Brockton, it's on West Elm Street. And in Rockland, in the AAA Plaza.
On Hingham Street.
On Hingham Street in Rockland.
Yeah, yep, and you can fill it right out there, and our staff, typically we have notaries on our staff present,
right,
so they can notarize the document for you, and you can record it and and get your protection put in place.
So I also just want to mention, if anybody's interested, at our offices, we have this brochure prepared by registries of deeds across Massachusetts with Secretary of State Bill Galvin, and it takes you through a point-by-point description of the homestead, the coverages, answers most of the questions about the homestead. And between reading this document and getting a sample form for you to fill out, you can record the homestead right away. If you own the property jointly, both parties would have to come to our office. You certainly get it notarized, filled out and notarized by somebody else, and then come down and record it. But we just want to highlight, again, we've done dozens of these council on aging and office hours and town halls, and certainly a lot of different questions we get. But one of the main points of our visits is to share that there's a simple vehicle out there to protect yourself, to live in your primary residence.
Right, right.
Any other thoughts on that?
Actually, if you have a question in whether or not you actually have a homestead in existence,
Yeah.
you can go to our website and search our records, search the Plymouth County records, and see whether it's actually, you see it recorded. And if you don't, then obviously you know you need it. If you see it's recorded, as we said earlier, even if you've refinanced in the meantime, then it still carries over. Now, if you got the homestead on a home that you have since sold,
Yes.
you would need to get a new homestead on your
Right.
new home.
Yeah, and in this brochure, it identifies the ways in which the homestead is terminated.
Yeah.
One of which is if you no longer live in the home, it
Right.
automatically goes away. You can actually file a document that eliminates the homestead
releases it,
rights.
yeah.
And it's a simple vehicle to protect you and keep you living in your property.
Yeah. And the brochure is in terms that are layman's terms, so it's very easy to follow, answers most of your questions, but if you do have any additional questions, they're certainly welcome to call us down at the registry, and we'll help them out as best we can.
So we have a couple minutes remaining. I know we haven't got the warning light hasn't gone off, as they say. What were some of the questions that people had out there as we went around that you remember, common questions that happened at these office hours? A lot of people, for one, don't know whether or not when they paid off a mortgage that a discharge has been recorded. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, that's a very common issue that we run into. And it's easy enough for us to check. We have the ability to go online. We have our laptops and have the records available to us so that we can check. And sometimes we're going back, and you gave the example from Middleborough where a fellow paid his mortgage off back in the 80s.
Yes.
And then you get into the problem where the lending agency, and this happens with a lot of banks, is that they get taken over by somebody else. So it's a tracking mechanism that you need to follow to be able to confirm whether or not that discharge has been recorded. And the reason that's important is the day is going to come when you're going to do one of two things. You're going to refinance your property, or you're going to sell it. And on both those occasions, you're going to have to prove that you have good, clear title to the property. And if that discharge is not on record, it's what we call a cloud on the title. So then, when you're actually in the process of selling and you have deadlines coming up, your back is basically against the wall to be able to track down this discharge. So these office hours have been a tremendous benefit in the sense that in everywhere we go, I think, someone has been asking to see if, to confirm that their discharge is on record. That once we alert to them to the fact that it's not on record, we give them some direction as to where they need to go from there to get it on record. I think it's a great benefit to the public and a real great service.
Yeah, and even for people watching this show, Many times, lenders automatically send in the discharge of your mortgage. Basically, your mortgage is paid off. You met your obligation. They discharge the lien on your property, which is a mortgage, and it gets recorded, and all goes fine. Some lenders send them back to individuals directly.
Right.
And many individuals we find think that is just a letter that they've paid off their mortgage. They don't realize there's a document there that has to get recorded at the registry in order to clear a title.
In fact, we had someone at the, I think it was at the Hanover Registry in the Road day, that actually brought in their old mortgage discharge.
Right, discharge.
And it was probably 10 years old.
Right.
But it hadn't been recorded yet. They still had the original, and
Right.
we took it from them and put on record
Recorded
and
and
basically cleared that part of the title for them.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so anybody out there watching that is unsure, either go online if you can manipulate through our search site. You can see it on your own. If not, come into one of our offices, bring in your, a tax bill that might have your book and page on it. That would allow our staff to look it up quicker, and they can tell you right away whether you have any undischarged mortgages on your property.
And that reminds me, you can not only come in and we can do that for you, but if you come in the first Thursday of the month, we have a training session.
Yes.
That Register Buckley, you started not too long ago.
About a year ago now, I think.
About a year ago. And it's a great, easy to learn. It takes a couple hours to teach you how to surf that particular website.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier in the program, but June 4th is the first Thursday in June. If the show catches your attention, or if it's past that when you're seeing it, just realize that you can call our office and find when the next session is. It's a 2-hour training session. We've targeted towards municipal employees to make them be able to do their job more efficiently to search records, whether it be assessors which use our site regularly, whether it be Conservation Commission agents, whether it be any individuals that are doing it for genealogical purposes, or if you're just a part-timer that want to come in. But we've covered a lot of ground, and I much appreciate you coming on. I think it was a timely refresher to some people, probably new information for others to hear about the Homestead Act. Thanks, Tim.
You bet. Glad to be here.
Great.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary. Smokey. Only you can prevent wildfires.
So I want to thank Tim White for being my guest on the show. We had a great discussion about all those town halls we visited, Council on Agings throughout Plymouth County. A lot of people that came in to see whether their mortgages, discharges had been recorded, anything to do with their titles, and general questions about real estate. But we also covered in this show a typical question that comes up about the Homestead Act, whether they've actually had one recorded, whether their original one is in effect, and those kind of things. So I want to thank Tim for joining me on that show to take us through that discussion. In this segment of the show, we always try to do something lighter in nature. In the holiday of May, we had Law Day on the 1st of May. That lawyers that came into our building at the Registry of Deeds saw the first colonial record establishing trial by jury. The colonial court in 1623 voted to have trial by jury. That tradition they carried from England went all around the rest of America and became embedded in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Mother's Day was in May, Memorial Day was in May, and John F. Kennedy's 98th birthday was celebrated in May. But May also celebrates Memorial Day. There's been a lot of talk about anniversaries relative to the Civil War this Memorial Day. So I'm going to talk about a couple of locations and one individual in Plymouth County that were reflective of honoring those who fought in the Civil War. In Abington, Island Grove Park has a memorial bridge dedicated to those that fought in the Civil War, and a memorial arch honoring the soldiers and sailors that fought in that war. It's a wonderful park, a jewel for the town of Abington. For many years, abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison would come prior to the Civil War to talk about the reasons for freedom of the slaves, certainly a great part of what led to the Civil War. And there's a monument in his honor in the middle of Island Grove Park. Island Grove Park is a member of the National Register of Historic Places. The next image you're going to see is an image of Brockton City Hall. Brockton City Hall, certainly one of the most beautiful city halls in America. In fact, when the National League of Cities did a booklet of all the beautiful city halls in America, they had Brockton City Hall on the cover, but it was built as a memorial to the Grand Army of the Republic who fought on the Union side in the Civil War. It has some very wonderful paintings inside it, identifying various battle scenes. The battle between the Merrimack and the Monitor, the early submarine battle, is in there, along with some cavalry charges and others. But it's a wonderful building built in honor of veterans to the Civil War, and certainly some of the scenes attract people from all around the country. Brockton City Hall is also on the National Register of Historic Places. And I'm going to talk about an individual, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a well-known jurist. Prior to that, though, when he was at Harvard, he joined the Army, fought in the Civil War, was wounded 3 times. He is in our notable land record collection because they had a summer home in Mattapoisett. He was a legal scholar and became a justice of the Supreme Court of Massachusetts. And in 1902, he was named to the United States Supreme Court by President Ted Roosevelt, unanimously confirmed by the Senate, which doesn't happen these days, and he served for 30 years. He was known in the court as the Great Dissenter. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. I want to thank Lorna Green Baker, Christine Richards from our office for helping me put this show together. I want to thank Dave Antoine for allowing me to put this program together to share the information across the areas that are covered by PAC TV. We think sharing this kind of information about people's most valuable asset is important, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you.